Right. Convener.
Moderator, Alistair Cumming, 413. I remember years ago visiting my gran after church in Lochwinnoch. I remember my father picking up and reading a copy of Life and Work. It was always on the table. I remember a box in the living room in our home in Kilbirnie, which had umpteen editions of Life and Work in it. And for me, for many of you, Life and Work holds many personal memories. Life and Work was born in 1879 through the vision and energy of Archibald Hamilton Charteris, a professor, a reformer, a servant of the church. He imagined a publication that would weave the work of faith into the everyday life of the people, reflecting the heartbeat of the church across Scotland and beyond. Since that time, Life and Work has been so much more than a magazine. It's been a faithful companion, connecting, encouraging, and challenging generations to live out their faith in a changing world. Rooted firmly in the affairs of the church, editorially independent, Life and Work has covered the broad range of human experience, offering news, hope, challenge, and inspiration to readers. It holds a special place in the heart of the church, carrying stories of mission, ministry, and community through times of war and peace, hardship and hope, reform and renewal. Yet today, sadly, we must also face difficult reality. In recent years, Life and Work, like so many other print publications, has faced steep challenges. Readerships and subscriptions have declined significantly, even as production costs have continued to rise. Whilst once a self-sustaining publication, generating a healthy surplus, Life and Work has in more recent years required increasing financial support from central funds, a position that cannot be sustained without putting strain on other vital areas of the church life and mission. Over recent years, every effort has been made to secure its future. The magazine was redesigned, refreshed, and reimagined. Emphasis was placed on growing digital subscriptions, establishing a dedicated website, and exploring cost reductions. Despite these committed efforts, the financial position has worsened. Circulation has dropped. Print sales income has also fallen sharply. Financially, the magazine has shifted from generating an annual surplus to significant losses, culminating in a projected deficit for this year of around £250,000. This position is forecast only to worsen in future years. An independent external review was carried out by a highly respected person from the publishing world. This review confirmed the painful truth that Life and Work in its current form, despite its proud history, is no longer financially sustainable, nor sufficiently aligned with the needs of a new generation of readers. It called for nothing less than a complete transformation if the church wished to continue its ongoing witness through a print publication. It is therefore with a heavy heart, but with a full understanding of our responsibility to the future, that FAPLT and the Assembly Trustees have recommended that the magazine in its present form be brought to a close. Today, for me, as it will be for many other people in this hall and beyond, is a time to reflect on Life and Work, with immense gratitude and deep sadness, as we mark a profoundly important moment in the life of the Church of Scotland. The closing chapter of Life and Work, our church magazine, after 146 years. I want to take this moment to express our deep thanks and heartfelt appreciation to the dedicated, talented, and long-serving staff of Life and Work, particularly to Lynn McNeill, its editor since 2002, to the advisory committee, and to all those writers, editors, and volunteers who have poured their hearts into this work across the generations. Their commitment and love for this magazine and the church have been extraordinary. We recognise that the uncertainty of the past months has been difficult, and we are truly grateful for their steadfastness and professionalism through it all. And yet, this report and the associated deliverances is not only about endings, it's about looking forward. FAPLT and the Assembly Trustees remain committed to strong communications that build community, connection and support among our people across this nation and beyond. We will seek to imagine and develop a new model, one that is financially sustainable, digitally accessible, and deeply rooted in the life of the Church as it is today, and as we pray it will be tomorrow. This effort will form part of our wider communication strategy, focused on supporting local leadership, ministry, sustainable finances, and especially engaging younger generations, key to the future of our Church. Digital transformation work is already underway, and it is our hope that by next year's Assembly, we will be able to report the launch of a new publication, one that captures the spirit of life and work, while reaching out boldly to new audiences. Until then, we honour what has been. Moderator, we give thanks for the light that life and work has carried for almost a century and a half. Its final pages may soon be written, but its legacy will live on in the Church, in the hearts that it has touched, and in the new future that we now commit ourselves to building. Moderator, I present the supplementary report and move the deliverance.
Thank you. Do we receive the joint supplementary report? I have notice of 3 questions. Robin Hill, Derek Browning, Justin Taylor. Robin.
Moderator, Robin Hill, number 53. When we look at the recent history of life and work, we see there have been a few editors. I've been editor from 1994 to 1999, so only 5 years. Robert Kernahan had been editor for, I think, 19 years. But Lynn has been editor, as the convener said, for 23 years. She and her team have operated with tremendous imagination, flair, and deep integrity. So why, convener, was she not even named, not even acknowledged in the supplementary report?
Moderator, I thank the Commissioner for his question. When we're compiling reports, there are a number of things which we take into consideration. I'd firstly like then to apologise that that wasn't included in the deliverance. I hope that by mentioning that in my speech, in all sincerity, in mentioning in my speech, for the professionalism and dedication, that would hopefully allow me to present that to the Assembly. I apologise if it should have been in the deliverances, but we certainly don't reduce and diminish our respect for Lynn and her team.
Thank you, convener. Derek Browning.
Moderator Derek Browning, number 4. The decisions around life and work, I can imagine, have not been something that have happened recently. And so I'd like to ask, since life and work, along with the comms team, the website and the social media part of the Church of Scotland form a significant part of the communication strategy, with the disappearance of life and work and possible changes to the comms team, what is the comms strategy for the Church of Scotland? And we heard something from the convener that something is being planned, but surely something in a more concrete form rather than promises for next year should have been before the General Assembly now. Where is the strategy for this year?
Moderator, I thank Dr Browning for his question. In terms of the communication strategy, there are many stakeholders that need to be consulted in this process. Life and work is one part of that in an integrated strategy that we want to bring together. It's much better to come to the Assembly with final proposal than it is to come with half-baked ideas. and therefore would like next year to bring that communication strategy to the Assembly.
Thank you, Convener. Justin?
Justin Taylor, Minister 417. I did a Master's, and I was very grateful to Life and Work that focused on South Africa and Life and Work's interpretation of from 1975 to 1985. And it was really clear how the voice of the church had changed over 10 years. And I just wanted to, it's just a simple one is, how do we make sure that this resource of our history is available in the public, that it doesn't get lost in the kind of mire of things? The one-to-one editorial team were really good at letting me into the archives, but it would be really helpful just knowing some of the way that we're going to protect this history so it doesn't get lost.
Thank you, Justin, for your question. I see no reason why we wouldn't continue to keep archives. We wouldn't continue to have that as a resource for you and for anybody else who wanted to access those archives.
Thank you. So we move to section 2, and there is an amendment in the name of John Ferguson. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
So after the words acknowledge and thank, add the editor and.
Is this seconded? John, I'll ask you to speak to it. I should say you're willing to accept it. Yeah, so in the light of they're willing to accept it? Yep.
Thank you, Moderator. John Ferguson, 283. I speak as a former convener of the Life and Work Advisory Committee, and many years before that I was involved in the former Board of Communication in supporting Life and Work. Producing Life and Work is very much a team effort, and it's right that everybody involved in its work should be acknowledged today. But the editor is the person who bears ultimate responsibility for producing the magazine every month. The editor leads the team, the buck stops with the editor. Moderator, we regularly see tributes to retiring conveners, for example, in our reports, and yet here we have the editor of the Church's national magazine, having served as editor for almost 23 years, having no acknowledgement of the work that she has undertaken on behalf of the Church. And I think, Moderator, that is extremely disappointing. I think it's wrong. And I would therefore ask the Assembly if we could add the words "and the editor." I should maybe have made it "and the editor, Lynn McNeill," but if we could add the words "and the editor" to the section of deliverance in order to overcome this unfortunate omission. I so move.
The clerks say they'll add in the name as well. So, the convener's happy to accept? Yes. Is the Assembly happy to accept? And accepted online. So, section 2 as amended. And approved online also. We come to a new section 3 in the name of Jim Stewart.
New section 3 is as follows. Note that the circulation of Life and Work in December 2024 was 6,328, made up of 5,162 copies sold in print, 554 sold in digital, and 612 promotional digital copies sent to parish ministers and parish magazine editors.
Is this seconded? Is the committee willing to accept? Yep. Jim, I'll ask you to speak.
Thank you so much, Moderator. Conveners accepting? Yes, thank you, Alice.
Yes.
Thank you. Moderator, thank you so much. I want to make a few comments, if I may, and I would also clear the way for the editor to speak as well. I think it's important that Lynn's voice is heard today. So here we are. This is really defining times for us as a church. And maybe today, this is one of the most tangible areas that we can focus on that can help us understand the church that we were and redefining the church that we are becoming. And therefore, it's good to pause, to stop, and to consider what is actually happening today. And we do this through the lens of life and work. 146 years. Now, that is a long time. I'm not sure who was on the throne back then, who moderator was, But just think about that timeline. And in that time, the life and work has been central to our communication strategy as a church, our voice, evangelical, pastoral, and prophetic, to the church and beyond. An editorially independent voice that speaks for and to the church that also, and this is really important as well, that gives members an opportunity to contribute to the church's witness by articles and by letters. And I smile because part of our role as advisors is when Lynn gets a tricky letter, what do we do with it? But it is an outlet into which the church can speak. Our identity as the national church has been enhanced and strengthened by the role of life and work and that which it has played. It has helped keep the necessary connection with every parish and congregation. It has meant the people in Orkney could tell the people in Perth what is happening in their church, what God is doing, how the church was ministering in that part of Scotland. We felt connected, we feel connected, a greater sense of belonging and being part of a much larger thing, the body of Christ, through the Church of Scotland. Alas, that is all about to change, and Lynn will make comments around that in a moment or two. But this is a seminal moment, a moment of loss, a moment of losing that physical, tangible marker of our identity that would lie in the coffee tables of our houses, our church cafes, and our kirks as well. So, as the convener of the advisory committee, our role was to advise the editor. When the letters, the articles, the adverts that would come in, we would consider with Lynn and advise her, but always it was her last word. Editorially independent, yes, but never disconnected from the heartbeat of the church. And I hope that whatever comes next, as part of our communication strategy, this editorial independence will continue. And so, moderator, as the convener of the committee, we do not come here today asking for the General Assembly to reverse the decision before us. We accept the need for radical change and that life and work will not be part of that onward journey. However, it would be remiss of me not to mention with grace and gentleness that the process that led us here could and should have been handled better. The staff are losing their jobs, their livelihoods. And again, notwithstanding the need for change, I'm sure the convener and others will reflect on this process, learn from it, and commit to a more open and collaborative approach in the future. Moderator, I finish by paying tribute to the staff of Life and Work, our amazing staff. They have served the Church of Scotland using their gifts and talents and professionalism, and we are indebted to them. And it's time for a roll call. Lynn McNeill, our editor. Tom Baldwin, our deputy editor. Jackie McAdam, feature writer. Diane Sanderson, business manager. And Melissa Grimley, administrator. Moderator, I pay tribute to them for their resilience and dignity over these last and recent times, for the leadership that Lynn McNeill has shown, her exceptional skills as an editor and leader of her team, for whom this role was never a job, it was always a calling to serve Christ. And although Life and Work will soon cease production, I'm sure we can all say that Life and Work has left its print on us as a church. And for that, moderator, we are truly thankful to God. Moderator, these are my comments on Life and Work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Lynn, it would be lovely if you could address the Assembly.
Thank you, moderator. Lynn McNeill, 483. I've never addressed this General Assembly and I'm quaking in my boots. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak. The first and hopefully only time I shall address this General Assembly. This is likely to be the very last report this Assembly will consider on the magazine of our church, and it's important for the sake of the team and the history books to ensure its contents are accurate. It matters to us as journalists. There's also a bigger story to be told. The Life and Work team has long acknowledged the need for change, but there's a wider story we need to tell you. The 21st century has seen a marked decline in the sales of print publications. The Scotsman, covering a city of more than 500,000 people plus a wider area across the central belt and borders, now only has a daily sale of 6,698 across print and digital. These are according to figures from the Audit Bureau of Circulation for the second half of 2024. Scotland on Sunday, which once sold over 100,000 copies each week, now sells only 3,350 copies in print. It's challenging times. The decline in circulation and sales of Life and Work also means the magazine has become less attractive to potential advertisers, resulting in a reduction in income from ad sales. The truth on the state of our own church and the target market for Life and Work can be found in the Assembly Trustees' own report at Appendix 9. The average number of people in the pews worshipping every week is 68,160 people. This, friends, is less than a single night at Taylor Swift's sellout concerts last summer at Murrayfield Stadium. This is the sort of audience we're looking at. We've also had to deal with the fallout of presbytery mission planning and the COVID-19 pandemic. Some churches did not reopen after the pandemic, and others are closing and uniting. Indeed, the Trustees' report also records that in 2024, 207 congregations formed 72 unions, compared with only a dozen annually previously. Every time there's a union or a closure, Life and Work loses sales. Like many parts of the church, the COVID-19 pandemic impacted us in unimaginable ways. It also resulted in a marked change from our years of plenty. Between 2008 and 2020, Life and Work delivered surpluses totalling more than £979,000, surpluses which were ploughed into the wider work of the church. This figure is actually much greater, as Blue Book reports to this Assembly for 2006 to 2008 reference six-figure surpluses. I know we were Presbyterian and too embarrassed to actually record the figures at that time, meaning Life and Work between 2006 and 2020 delivered well over £1 million for church funds. Turning to our projected deficit for this year, it has to be noted that the imposition of internal recharges for IT, facilities management, finance and HR played a significant part in the figure which has been quoted in the report, totalling a projected £113,000. 3 of these recharges were imposed for the first time in 2025. It would have been easy to fight and argue for the continuation of Life and Work, but the reality is we would be facing the same situation again in 6 to 12 months. Friends, although there are seeds of hope in some places, we are living in a market of diminishing returns. These are the hardest of times for the church into which I was baptised and am a communicant member. But in parting, can I ask that we all find new ways of working together collaboratively and transparently, not just in this court, not just in 121, but in our presbyteries and local churches. For, to quote a former moderator, there is no them and us, only us. In closing, I would like to thank the staff I have had the privilege of working with and serving, not just on the magazine, but within the wider church, and also express my deep gratitude to all who have served with the Advisory Committee, and particularly recently Jim, who has walked this path with us all with love, care and compassion. Thank you to all of you at General Assembly and beyond. Your support, love and prayers have been valued beyond measure. Finally, can I remind the Assembly of the motto of our sister organisation, the Church of Scotland Guild, another child of Charterists, and use it as a cornerstone for the future, whose we are and whom we serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. The General Assembly has spoken, and they have shown their appreciation to you and your team. Thank you. So the new Section 3, in the name of Jim Stewart. Does the Assembly approve? Approved in the hall and online. Turning to Section 3, there are two amendments in the name of Jim Stewart.
Thank you, Moderator. The first amendment is to Section 3 by deleting readership and substituting the word sales.
Seconded? Yeah. Is the convener willing to accept? Willing to accept. Jim, are you wanting to speak, or are you happy that it's been accepted? Okay. The second amendment. Oh, sorry, vote on that one. So voting on deleting readership and substituting sales. Committee's happy to accept. Assembly's happy to accept. In the hall and online. Thank you.
The second amendment in the name of Jim Stewart is as follows. Amend Section 3 as amended by adding the words and the imposition of internal charges after life and work. Recharges.
Seconded. Convener willing to accept? Yeah. Jim, you want to say anything?
Nope.
Nope. Convener's willing to accept. Does the Assembly approve that amendment? So approved both in the hall and online. So turning to Section 3 as in the print, now amended. No notices, no request to speak. Is that approved? Approved both in the hall and online. We have a new Section 4.
This again is in the name of Jim Stewart. It is note that Life and Work contributed £979,305 in surpluses to the work of the Church of Scotland between 2008 and 2020.
Seconded. Convener willing to accept. Jim, happy? Yep. Does the General Assembly accept? Yeah, accepted in the hall and online. There is an amendment in the name of Brian Kerr.
Thank you, Moderator. This is an amendment to the Section 4 in the print in the name of Brian Kerr. It reads as follows. Add at the end and instruct the Faith Action Programme leadership team and the Assembly trustees to ensure that the principle of editorial independence affirmed by several General Assemblies remains a cornerstone of any future membership magazine, to bring forward proposals to the General Assembly of 2026 for an advisory body to enable such editorial independence and until such proposals are agreed, to retain the skills of the current Life and Work Advisory Committee as the advisory body for any interim publications, including electronic newsletters, which are deemed to be a replacement communication vehicle for Life and Work.
Is this seconded? Is the convener willing to accept? No. Brian.
I knew that would happen. Care 212. Moderator, I've served in a number of roles in various bodies of the General Assembly, and one was that I acted for the convener of Mission and Discipleship Council back in 2009-10 as the convener of the editorial or the review into editorial independence, which was called for by this Assembly back in 2009. Life and Work, 146 years, always was assumed to be independent editorially until around 1972 or the early 70s, when a special commission was called for, when it would appear that the editor of the time had a conflict with the Publications Committee, which appeared to be based upon a breakdown of communication. Now, since 1972, this idea of editorial independence has come up multiple times before the General Assembly, and every time we've accepted that as the principle for the magazine, so that the editor, and let me read from that Commission's report in 1972, so that the editor conceives or can express what they conceive to be the Church's attitude towards current issues as they arise from time to time, to allow a paper which is readable, informed and balanced. My worry is that we need to ensure that any future publication or magazine is allowed that same freedom of independence, so that at a time of immense and rapid change in our church, there is something that can actually speak into those spaces where church members might find themselves wondering and thinking about where the church is going. I remember at the time of that review, Lynn calling Life and Work almost like the annoying little cousin of the church who could stand on the side and perhaps shine a bit of a light or ask the daft questions, and it not just be a cheerleading mouthpiece for the latest ideas and schemes that are there. Moderator, I do think that we ought to affirm this idea of editorial independence going forward. It is still the stated policy of the Assembly to have a magazine that has that at its cornerstone. What we're asking for is that we affirm that, and that the proposals that FAPLT bring next year for a new publication, they are able to bring forward plans for an appropriate advisory body. For if that's done internally, or if it goes out to a company to actually publish on the church's behalf, there surely needs to be advisory bodies that can help them understand the church, and also they can run ideas past. Until then, it seems that we have a good committee, which was called for in that review back in 2010, that the advisory committee not be a subcommittee of the Communications Board or another body in the church, but be appointed by this Assembly and chaired by someone specifically from out with any other communication committee, so that that committee was also as independent as it could be. So to retain them in this interim, so that we have those skills. And Moderator, I therefore move this amendment in my name. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a comment from Tim Maynard and then Robin Hill.
Thank you, Tim Maynard, 131. That's the right
Got it
pronunciation.
right.
Well done, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Third time
I was just
lucky.
going to keep on getting up until you got it right. Fantastic.
Got it right.
I should declare, like Peter, I am also on the FAPLT and a member of the Resource and Presence Group. What I want to say is We appoint committees to scrutinise these things. The committees meet through the year. We go through the nominations committee. Anybody can apply to do that. We're interviewed to be on these committees. Part of our remit, well, our remit is then set, and we deal with that through the year. And with a heavy heart sometimes, we take these decisions that sadly need to be made. So as part of that process, we had 3 different experts in the field who came in and looked at the current model and looked at what was being proposed. And can I say that each of them was flabbergasted that editorial independence was something that we were looking at when we're also looking at a wider comms strategy. I'm very strongly against that notion of editorial independence for a future publication. It kind of jumps the gun anyway, because we haven't actually fleshed out what is going to lie ahead. But at the moment, there's one role within the whole Church of Scotland that has editorial independence, and that's the editor of Life and Work. That might have worked in the past, but the moderator can't speak with editorial independence on behalf of the Church of Scotland. The chair of the Assembly Trustees can't. Not one single person can, other than the editor of Life and Work. Yes, it's a journalistic cornerstone, I guess, but within a wider comms strategy, when we're looking at everything coming together and how everything fits together and really promotes the life and mission of the church, I think actually it's severely misplaced. I can understand why some people are calling for it, but I think in this situation it's sincerely misguided. And I think at this stage it's just too early. Proposals will come to the next General Assembly, and those will be fleshed out in due course. But at this stage, I think it's too early to go down that route. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Robin?
All my adult life, I have been...
Name and number.
Oh, sorry, I did that the last time as well. Number 53, Robin Hill. All my adult life, I have been unionised. First the National Union of Journalists, then the Association of University Teachers, then the National Union of Journalists, and now, along with Brian Kerr, Unite the Union. I really value my union membership. And thinking back more than 30 years to when I went to my first NUJ meeting, a fellow journalist said to me, so where are you an editor? And I said, Life and Work. And he said, oh, public relations. And that really hurt me. That really hurt me. And I went away and I thought about it, and I thought about it some more. And over the years of my tenure at Life and Work, I realized that, yes, this truly is journalism, because the editor of Life and Work, the team at Life and Work itself would always be about telling the truth to power. And that's something that we do need across communications as a whole. We need to make sure that people whose job it is to tell the truth are not reined in by managers, not reined in by people who would seek to use power, perhaps for their own means, maybe not. But editorial independence is absolutely vital. And so, moderator, all I would say is think about it. You choose.
Thank you. We have no other requests to speak. It's on number 4, but not on the amendment. Is it on the amendment you're speaking? Derek Browning.
Moderator Derek Browning, number 4, I rise to speak in favour of the amendment. I couldn't quite believe my ears that a commissioner at this General Assembly said that freedom of speech is misguided. Freedom of speech is never misguided. And the General Assembly had, at the beginning of the afternoon, talk about the freedom of speech that we're supposed to be supporting all across the world. Surely it is essential that that same courtesy, necessity, and privilege is extended to this kind of situation. We have, at this General Assembly, for many years, valued that important freedom of speech for this magazine that we have now terminated. And it seems to me to be astonishing that the Church of Scotland isn't big enough and strong enough and broad enough to allow everybody to have their say, whatever it is that they wish to say, through this particular form of journalism. I think it's something that the General Assembly would be extremely remiss to let go on the vague promise that something might happen in the future. That's not good enough, moderator, for the General Assembly. It's not good enough for the principle of freedom. It's not good enough for good journalism. And it's not good enough for the good news of Jesus Christ that we want to speak out freely to the nation, to the church, and to the world. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Brian. Any final word from you before I ask?
Point of order. I'm not sure whether that was a direct attack on myself, but in response to that, if it's been taken that I am speaking against, sorry, Tim Maynard, 131, if it's been taken that I'm speaking against freedom of speech, I would love to see my direct quote of what it was that I said. I'm speaking against editorial independence in this particular situation, which is not the same as freedom of speech. So if a commissioner is being accused of speaking against freedom of speech, that's not what I said. And it's certainly not what I believe. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. Yes. Sorry. Right, we'll let the business convener speak first and then...
Moderator, during the course of the debate, a few names have come in on section 4, including Tricia Inglis and Margaret Hunt. We just want to make sure that you want to speak on section 4 as it's in the print. If you want to speak on the amendment, please let us know so we can move your name across.
Alistair, and then there's a question from Colin Sinclair.
I'm going to be very brief. I think the principle of the editorial independence is important, and it's the editorial independence. So that means that you and I can write a letter or submit something, and it's not being screened through, does it fit the party line? It's not a journalistic independence for that person to speak out and say whatever they want on their own behalf. That's important. What I'm hoping Brian might accept this is, it does seem to me this very detailed amendment is premature when we don't have anything on. And I'm wondering whether the Assembly might simply affirm the importance of editorial independence in any future publication and leave it at that until we know what we're talking about.
Colin, if you ask your question, Brian can have a think.
Moderator, it may take longer for Brian to have a think. We've been waiting for many years. Sinclair, 63. Moderator, my question is simply this. Could the convener please explain to us what will happen in the year between the end of life and work and something new, given that we're going through a period of greater change than I've known in my ministry, with a lot of uncertainty, and at a time like that you want better communication, not less communication, and you need to have it so that the church, the wider church, is confident. I would really like to know what their plans are, having come to this proposal, to tell us what will happen in the 12 months while they have a long-term solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Convener.
Moderator, with your permission.
Yeah, so David Cameron of the Assembly Trustees.
Thank you, Colin, for that very important question. It's a good one to interject with the communication strategy. The Assembly Trustees have the responsibility to deliver that, and over the last couple of months we've been working with the Chief Officer and his team to try and get approval for a communication strategy to take forward. That was more or less accepted at the last Assembly Trustees meeting. So just to give some background, communications landscape and the Church's context has shifted dramatically, as you've heard over these last couple of days. The recommendation to rebalance effort away from predominantly human interest content towards communications that support the Church's strategic transformation is necessary and timely. This is not a criticism at all of past work, but an urgent call to redirect narrative and capacity toward the future, highlighting best practice, driving internal reform, and supporting the Church's evolving identity. Our social media, for example, must serve mission, not momentum. Communications should increasingly reflect our calling to be a courageous, visionary church, visibly engaged with the real and pressing issues of reform, renewal, and relevance, both within and beyond our walls. Therefore, focus going forward should be internal rather than external. But in any communication strategy, these must align in some way. We must provide as much information, materials, ideas, support to local congregations as we can in ways that they can easily access and use. Whilst there will be issues that we wish to share via various media, there is no need to respond to every message immediately. We wish to see a communications culture that is both outward-looking and reform-minded, equipping the Church to tell stories that matter, amplify impact, and share a narrative that reflects the changes we are all navigating. And of these, and part of the decision-making process of the Assembly Trustees, we agreed in the last month that agreement to the broad approach of 15 communication areas, too many to identify today, is a necessary part of our future communication strategy, one of which relates to having an integrated approach to a communication plan going forward that draws all our communication requirements together, website, social media, and published media. That they require a change in direction and focus, particularly in terms of a greater emphasis on internal communications too, because that's what we've heard, but also in other areas highlighted in our document. That key existing work remains important, but we will need to be scaled down in the future to match available finances and resources. One of the reasons why we're in the position we are today. That we establish a communications forum or similar to have oversight of this critical area in the future to ensure the necessary stakeholder engagement. That's what we're going to do going forward in the next year, and I hope the Assembly will accept this answer as part of our strategy going forward today. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So the clerk is advising me that we have Mr. Kerr's amendment, and we also have a counter amendment, which is really what it is, from Alistair May, so his different form of wording. So if we could see, we've got...
Getting it on the hub.
We'll get it on the hub, and I think the intention is to take one against the other.
So it may be helpful, I don't know, if we could allow Brian to speak to finish his bit off, then Alistair says why he's doing it, and by which time we'll have it on the hub, and then everybody will see.
Thank you, Kerr 212. I've had a think.
Way!
Yeah. Then the microphone switches off, I tell you. That's good. Now, Moderator, thank you for Assembly hearing what I brought, and I think why we've articulated its importance. I was a bit bemused that members of FAPLT saying that editorial independence was severely misplaced and misguided. That's kind of what I wrote down, and it might not have been freedom of speech, but certainly that policy is misguided. I'm not convinced it is. And even in a wider communication strategy, which, again, we heard from the chair of the trustees, but it would have been really good if we'd have heard more about that as part of the report, so that we were able to weigh all these things up as an assembly and not hear these things as an answer to a question in another debate. These are the things that are important. If we're going to make decisions on things, it's really good that we have that information. What is the strategy going to be going forward, and how will anything play into that? We're taking decisions with half information at times, and that's not overly helpful. But the telling truth to power, as my good friend Dr. Hill mentioned, is so vitally important. And I cannot for the life of me, think why this assembly or anybody within it would worry about that independence, would worry about someone being able to shine a light without a worry that they're going to be disciplined or pulled up in some sort of contractual obligation. It's really, really important that we, at this time of immense change, the likes of which we've never experienced before in living memory in the church, that we have something, someone, some publication, some mechanism, some suite of resources that we know we can contact, we can listen, and will give an accurate and true and fair picture of what's going on. Editorial independence is important. I hear as well what Dr. May says about stopping it where it is. I think allowing or asking that the FAPLT to bring back with their plans what an advisory body might look like, might be an advisory body for the whole strategy. That's not a bad thing. It's empowering, hopefully, for FAPLT and the Assembly Trustees to take away, to think and come back next year. And I would urge, I've got an Amazon parcel somewhere coming to my door right now. If my ring goes off, I'm in trouble. But I really hope that the Assembly will take this forward and give that confidence to an affirmed policy of this Assembly that we are not worried about editorial independence in our communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Can I help you now?
Well, on the hub, I've lost Alistair May, but I mean, he's maybe
thought
on the hub. But
my arms were up in the air because my bell wasn't working, and I was hoping there might be a strike of lightning, Brian. But you know, I'm just, you know, I love you. Right. The next bit, it is all a bit new here. So in the hub, we've got, and it's called a counter motion, but it's a counter amendment, and it's in the name of Alistair May. So he's going to speak to that. And then thinking about what Brian said, so he's got his amendment, we think about what Alistair's going to say to his amendment, which I'll read out in a minute once it comes up on the screen. I'm ad-libbing here, helping my team. And then we will hear from the convener and see what they've got to say on the whole matter. And that might just frame the debate for us. Have we got Alistair May's? I know you're there, lovely. But you're not on the screen, I am. You didn't want to look at that, do you?
Okay, here we go.
Look at that, okay. So this, right, oh no. Right, yeah, he is there, sorry, it's my sight, it's my eyesight. Right, here we are. Calm is restored. So this is in the name of Alistair May, and this would be an amendment to section 4 as in the print, and it would begin the sentence, affirm the principle of editorial independence in any future publication for members.
Alistair.
I'll stay well within time. Two things. First of all, one of the things I will always remember about Life and Work is reading it and throwing it across the room, because I read something I didn't agree with. And I think in a broad church that's important, because I also read things I really did agree with, and I'm sure someone else was throwing across the room somewhere else in the church. I think that's really important. Not just towing a line that we've agreed in the Assembly, but actually questioning it. That's important. However, I accept the fact that this is happening, and our committee are not at a place to have a strategy out for us. That's how it works. It takes time. So I don't really think that we should be giving very detailed instructions of how that should happen until we have something which we can criticise or we can change or whatever when it comes. So I'm suggesting to the Assembly we just lay down that this principle matters to us of editorial independence. We stop there, and then when we see what the committee's got, we can decide whether or not the safeguards are sufficient depending on the whole of the policy. That's all I'm suggesting.
Thank you very much. So turning to the committee, which convener is going to speak to this? Alistair.
Moderator, I'd like to thank both Brian and Alistair for their amendments. Suffice to say that I'd be extremely happy to accept Alistair's amendment to that. I would not be happy with Brian's amendment. The communication strategy is a work in progress. It was only confirmed by the Assembly Trustees last week. It's something that we're working on together with the Assembly Trustees, other stakeholders, in putting together a communications forum. And I think the amendment that Alistair has proposed would actually meet that and would inform that debate. I do understand Brian, and I respect him. I also respect the desire to uphold editorial independence. But that was the past. And we need to imagine a new future. And I believe that Brian's motion risks entrenching a structure that's both premature and potentially counterproductive. Brian's motion anticipates and influences the decision of next year's General Assembly. Yet we need time to have discussion. We need time to have consultation. And part of the Life and Work Advisory Board will be part of that consultation as we go forward. Let's not rush to codify the future process or have the yoke of the past weighing down our thinking for the future and our opportunity to innovate. I would urge you to reject Mr Kerr's amendment.
Thank you, Convener. So you would be willing to accept Alistair's, but not willing to accept Brian's, obviously. Brian, are you still wishing to pursue this? Yes. Okay, so we will be putting the two amendments against each other. So it will be a case of voting for either Brian's amendment or voting for Alistair's amendment. The wording will come up on the screen. It's on the hub, right, so you've got the wording. Sheila, you'll talk us through the voting.
Thank you, Moderator. Good to have a little bit of variety about how we vote. It's not a simple for or against. You're either voting for Brian's amendment or Alistair's amendment. The relevant buttons will appear on the hub. Button 1 in the hall for Brian's amendment, button 2 for Alistair's amendment, and the vote is now open. Five seconds. The vote is now closed.
Just to let you know, we will take a break after this vote once we've completed the joint supplementary report. So they're voted for Brian's amendment, 72, for Alistair's 241. So Alistair's amendment carries. The convener has indicated that he's willing to accept this. Does the Assembly accept Section 4 as amended by... Okay, Sorry, right, so we're now seeing, before we get there, a question from Margaret Hunt and a comment from Tricia Ingalls, which is on the amended section 4.
Yes.
Maggie Hunt
Maggie
is...
Hunt 289. Moderator.
Oh, yes, yep.
It's a daft lassie question, so I hope the convener will allow me. If, as noted in section 4, work is already commencing to explore an alternate financially sustainable magazine, and given that we've only just voted as a General Assembly, why were staff given notice of redundancy several weeks ago? And why are staff being made redundant whose skills clearly fit what will be future roles within the church?
Convener.
Moderator, the Resource and Presence Programme Group have been very aware of the financial challenges of life and work, tending to this since the programme group came into existence 2 years ago. A formal review was initiated around this time last year, with the findings submitted in late autumn, and discussions took place over the winter. The time to take action turned out to coincide with the voluntary exit scheme in the National Office, and that was never our intention. In a desire to be transparent and to allow the staff to take advantage of the voluntary exit scheme, the staff of Life and Work were given early notice of this General Assembly proposal. Because it was only a proposal, it didn't offer certainty. And I know that it's been hard for the staff. The terms of the voluntary exit scheme, as I'm advised, will be available to the Life and Work team for 2 weeks after the General Assembly, now that this deliverance has been passed.
And a comment from Tricia Ingalls.
Thank you, Moderator. Tricia Ingalls, 325. It was just a comment really with regard to exploring an alternative to life and work in its present form. And to do that, I wanted to touch on a couple of things that have been mentioned here this week. The first one was about the church having an ageing population, and I think sadly we all agree with that. And our church in Monifieth stands testament to that. But I am amazed sometimes when somebody, even in their 80s, will whap out their phone or their laptop or whatever and show me something. And sometimes they know more what they're doing than I would with a piece of technology. And I think everybody learnt more about technology during COVID. And also this week, praise was given to the Presbytery of Perth for their weekly roundup newsletter, which is put out every Friday. So in conclusion to just my comment, it was just to say that if something online is taken into consideration, don't write off that an older population would not understand that or wouldn't want to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. So section 4 as amended. Approved in the hall, approved online. So that takes us to the end of the joint supplementary report. We're going to take a break. If you could be back here just before 15:15. Ready to go at 15:15 would be great. Thank you.